And we have the commissioners present whom we are expecting here this evening, so I would like to call to order um, this regular board meeting of the Urbana Park District Board of Commissioners for the month of November. And the first item of business is remote attendance, but I don't believe, even though we have one board member who is remote, that she is planning to Zoom into us tonight. So I would like then to move on to public hearing under truth in taxation. So this is an annual process that we go through, wherein we hold a public hearing to comment on to accept comments from the public regarding our tax levy for the coming year. So the Board of Park Commissioners, the Urbana Park District, Champaign County, Illinois, now opens a public hearing on this evening, the November the 8th, 2022. The hearing is being held at our Kerr Street Planning and Operations Facility. The purpose of the hearing is to receive comments from the public on the proposed tax levy as required by truth in taxation law. And we did publish in advance the black box notice that's been out there for 30 days. Is there anyone from the public here wishing to make a comment to the board? Seeing no indication of that, I will declare this public hearing closed, and we can move on to our next item of business, which is a public hearing for annual bond sale. And this is the infamous BINA hearing, which we do not do necessarily every year, and we probably will not do a year hence, but we do this in order to alert the public of our intentions to issue bonds, which we use for capital projects and land acquisition of the district. So the Board of Park Commissioners of the Urbana Park District, Champaign County, Illinois, now opens a public hearing, again on November 8th, 2022, at a little after 7 p.m. And this hearing is also being held at the Planning and Operations Facility, 1011 East Kerr Avenue in Urbana. And the purpose of this hearing is to receive public comments on the proposal to sell bonds of the district in the amount up to $2,950,000 for payment of land condemned or purchased for parks, for the building, maintaining, improving, and protecting of the same, and the existing land and facilities of the district, and for the payment of the expenses incurred in that regard. And is there any member of the public who would like to make a statement during the public hearing for the annual bond sale? And again, I see no indication of anybody wishing to make comments on this. Now, our agenda suggests that we actually hold a roll call vote to adjourn this public hearing. I don't know that we have done that in times past, but
I think we tend to do it when we're wearing masks as well.
Yeah, well, that
however you prefer.
Well, if there's some legal requirement that I don't know about, why don't we go ahead and do that? Could we have a motion that we now adjourn this public hearing?
I move to adjourn the public hearing.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the point? Let's hold a roll call vote. We'll start with Roger.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with the 4 commissioners present voting. So we move on now to the acceptance of the agenda for the evening. And I'm not aware of any suggested changes. do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented tonight?
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's a tie, so it's been seconded and thirded. Is there any discussion on this point? Hearing none, do our roll call vote, starting with Cedric?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously as well. So now, we're ready for any general purpose public comment. Is there anyone here from the public wishing to make comments to the board on any other topic? Seeing none, then we can move on to staff introductions, I hope.
Michael, we had a cancellation today. Christina was not able to join us. We're going to
Okay.
reschedule back, or again in December.
You mean a postponement, I hope?
Yes, a postponement.
Sorry to be pedantic with you there, but okay, I'm glad to hear that that's a postponement and not a cancellation.
Better word.
Okay, that takes us along then to the UPDAC report. And we had a set of minutes included in our board packet tonight. Any questions, comments? Of course, Nancy, who often attends these meetings, is not here tonight. Were you there, Cedric?
Yes.
Anything noteworthy beyond what you saw in the minutes?
No.
Well, then, if there are no questions, then let's move on to Roman numeral 6, our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda this evening, our meeting minute approvals for the October 4 board study session and the October 11 regular board meeting. The receipt of the 3 monthly departmental reports, namely administration, planning and operations, and recreation. Approval of the monthly paid accounts payable. Action to accept the philanthropy report and gifts listed with gratitude. And action on ordinance 2022-06, authorizing the sale/disposal of personal property of the district.
I move to approve all of the action items on the consent agenda and accept all of the information items listed on the consent agenda in an omnibus manner.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. And I will ask if there were any commission that actually wanted any of these items removed, but I see no indication of that. And we've already got 2 that have moved to approve it. Okay, under our rules, then there is to be no further discussion at this point, and we should hold a roll call vote. We'll start with Roger to the right.
Aye.
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 And that also carries unanimously with the 4 commissioners currently present voting. And that takes us to the financial reports.
Laura's up first.
Here we go. Starting with our revenue expenditures report, sum 1. All funds excluding the capital fund is page 1 of this report. Revenues for the period were $10,815,711. Expenditures were $7,156,628. Giving us a surplus for after 6 months into the fiscal year. Excess of revenues over expenditures paid were $3,659,082. Sum 2 is our capital improvements fund standalone. Revenues for 6 months was $1,144,413. Expenditures $1,911,433. Expenditures exceeded revenues, resulting in a deficit of $767,019. Again, this is due to our bond cycle, which December will receive the funds for the GO bonds, likely see revenues higher than expenditures. Sum 3. This is our district-wide snapshot. Note that the ending balance for the district as a whole, $16,745,304. The remaining summary reports are the individual fund reports for our three main working funds, which is general, recreation, and museum. Last page of this report is the UIAC fund. On to the treasurer's report. It's a report of the amount of cash the district has on a single day, October 31st, 2022. All 25 funds are listed with where the cash is being invested. Investments on this date totaled $19,265,665.72. Page 2, top section lists the amounts that we have in interest-bearing accounts. Of that $19,266,000, total dollars on hand, $17,253,000 is out in investments at varying rates. Just a quick note, we did renew 4 CDs with IPTLAF on October 27th with a combined interest rate of 4.51% for a year. So this will result in approximately $43,000 in interest income this time next year. Yay! The bottom section of this page 2 is the interfund loans. There are no changes here. And page 3 is the last section of our treasurer's report listing disbursements for the month of October. Vendor payments total match the paid accounts payable in the consent agenda. And the total disbursements of funds for October, $839,288. I present to you the treasurer's report for audit.
I move to accept the treasurer's report for audit.
Second.
Just for clarity, I think Cedric was quickest on the draw on that one.
He's younger.
That has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the point? Hearing none, let's do a roll call, starting with Cedric.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously.
Very good. And our last report is our capital budgets report. The areas highlighted with an asterisk in the column, it signifies the areas of new activity for October. Starting with our 2019A ARS capital budget, we had a single purchase of an ADA paddle boat for $4,235. 2022 budget, we had 4 tree donations totaling $737. I apologize that I didn't have that dollar amount out there for you. The construction crew projects had $1,500 in concrete block, $454 in rock, $886 in rentals, and $3,075 in lumber. 2021, again, under tributes and donations, 2 girls were donated. 1 was using their capital budget account. I apologize for that as well. $570 for the 1 girl. Under recreation and small equipment, we had a $4,250 flooring deposit for the Phillips Rec Center. Blair Improvements, $2,400 for Upland. This is design number 6. And then we had an $80,803 invoice paid to Petrie Kuhn towards the outdoor learning pavilion out of the museum capital grant. 2020, this is the remainder. The flooring was split into 2 capital budgets, so $2,170 also came out of this budget. 2019 had no activity. 2018 had a actual revenue for a memorial tree, $270, and 2017 had no activity. And I will turn it over to Derek and
Andy.
remote Andy.
Can I ask a silly question?
Absolutely.
How is it that we get revenue in a 2018 capital budget?
I had a
I'm glad you asked the question.
I actually had the same
Because
question.
as I was putting this together, I have that on my audit list to find out what was going on with that. I have a suspicion it was probably just coded incorrectly in our general ledger, so I'm certain that it will be corrected.
Okay.
See, you guys pay attention, I love it. Oh yeah, I did that on purpose to see if we're all paying attention. Thank you.
Are you ready for updates?
We are.
Okay, I will get some pictures up here for my update portion. I apologize, I'm coming in virtually this month. I believe you should be seeing the pictures now,
Yay.
starting with the Updeck Learning Pavilion, being my first update. I think last month I showed a picture of the delivery of the pavilion to the site. And this month now you can see the posts and beams are up, and the masonry group has begun their work. Even more recently, as of late last week, the parking lot asphalt has been laid down and marked for the parking spaces. Here you can see the progress of the block for the building, and then the beginning of the fireplace area. So more recently, you can see some progress in both of those locations. The fireplace structure with the chimney. I'll try to get a better picture next time. With all the scaffolding, it was kind of hard to get a good image from a distance away, kind of get a better feel for it, but it looks really nice. The other picture, which is on my right, is the interior. So in the foreground is the bathroom space, and then in the back area is what will be the storage room. Then more electrical and plumbing work is still remaining, as well as the finishes to the structure, including the roofing, siding, flooring in the bathroom, and painting of the interior block. I did also want to touch on the retaining wall as part of the road project. So what you're seeing here are some options that we ended up selecting for stone veneer. We worked with Fairgram and the Illinois Brick to review options and selected these to actually get some samples delivered to the site. Last week those samples came in, and we had a meeting at the wall to narrow down our options and discuss next steps. Illinois Brick is going to price out our two preferred options to see if there's any difference in costs associated with the material. Structurally, Fairgram reviewed the wall and noted that it's structurally sound. As part of our next steps, they will then formally document the wall structurally is accepted, and we'll propose our remedy to the contractor to review. Timing wise, unfortunately, we're getting a little later into the year. It seems more likely that for sure the parking lot and maybe the wall itself may need to hold until we get consistently warmer weather in the spring. And then I wanted to touch base on our 5-year capital plan. So tonight we have the 2023 capital for your review and approval, but we also wanted to take some time and review the remaining 4 years as part of our draft 5-year capital plan. And so with the remaining years, I'll kind of go on the specific projects that are outside kind of what's the regularly appearing budget lines. Recreation operations, small equipment, vehicles and equipment, tributes and donations, technology. So I'll kind of focus on more of the big moves for each year. In 2024, I don't know if you can see this okay. It's our second year compiling funds for trail improvements at South Ridge. So that first year will be in the 2023 that we presented last month. And then it's also focused on the Prairie Weaver complex, so athletic fields and amenities that could include improvements associated with the trailhead for KRT, as well as a potential work with the city with their ITEP application for that trail along Baker's Lane. And then we've also identified some funds for EV charging installation. And so this could be twofold for public facing facilities to be able to provide more of those opportunities, but also to be beginning to prepare our vehicle storage for EV charging, maybe to upgrade our fleet in the future. They have the ability to do that. And then an item we've had on our capital prioritized list for a while is the greenhouse, which has been something our grounds department has been asking for a number of years, as I understand. And so we have some funds associated with that included.
Where would this greenhouse go?
Hickory Street
Hickory.
site?
We've also had some other
I agree with
discussions with other groups where there may be some other collaborative, so we have some options.
And the purpose is for like storing woody annuals?
More for propagating annuals and also some native seed propagation as well. Okay, Andy, you're good to continue?
For 25?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is focused towards King Gateway Trail, potentially Seating Plaza, and then also King Park has the playground replacement scheduled this year as well, so that'll all kind of work nicely together. And then we've also included another item that's kind of been our prioritized list for on the back burner for a while is the demolition of the storage shed out at Canada. Much of this work can be accomplished in-house, but there will be some contracted work that's going to be needed for some utilities, primarily relocation of an electrical panel box that's currently housed with that structure, but we would need to relocate it before we demo the building itself.
Can we go back to the EV charging?
Sure.
One, are there not any funds available for the city or the state to help cover that? And two, what would be our timeline for, like, I guess I'm just curious as to doing it now, how does technology change or stay the same? I don't own an electric vehicle, so I have no idea.
Yep.
You know, so I think that, I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're really just wanting to protect some money in a future capital year, anticipating that between now and 2024, we'll do more research on it. I think our CARES goal called for this winter begin contacting other municipal agencies that have begun working on EV charging stations, learn more about what's been being worked on, and also start looking for grant sources. We anticipate this wouldn't be enough to really touch it. So, but it's basically getting us in prepared to do so.
We don't know of any grants available today, but we're hoping as things roll out, there'll be more
I just
opportunities from the
heard
feds.
talk
state.
about state of Illinois and the
Yep.
the governor's a longer term plan of
Right,
having to have more of these if we want to.
right.
So I just didn't know if there was an opportunity. So
So our long-term goal is to convert the fleet, and that will depend on what funds are available, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe there'll be incentive programs, you know, things like that that might entice us or encourage us. We're hopeful.
Okay.
You know, certainly looking at straight up cost,
what does
that
the
would be a challenge.
fleet mean exactly?
That's the
That's part of
the
it.
All the
we're-
vehicles.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like, we're also buying today we're approving for like a huge ton truck and a half-ton truck, which we don't have options for those at the,
Not at this time. Yeah.
so,
There'll probably be some sort of layered overlap, getting the infrastructure and then being able to purchase vehicles and then keep adding to that. Hopefully, there'll be a straight line path that all the innovations will work, you know, for an extended period into the future. So that's probably what every municipal group's hoping and looking at. My assessment would be there'll probably be a lot of energy around that, so we'll hear a lot from MTD, city, Park District, Forest Preserves, you know, groups like that throughout the state.
thanks.
In 2026, we're starting to compile funds for another large project at Crystal Lake Park, and that's the Lake House stairs and terrace area. And And then we have two different playgrounds that are in our schedule, Victory and Sunnycrest. So we have $125,000 for those. Also including a trails budget for Sunnycrest as well, to be able to add an accessible trail to the what's done there for play area. And then a general facility painting budget line. Just had some miscellaneous painting projects that have been on our overall list, so we wanted to set aside a decent amount of funds for this year, and then be able to evaluate specifically what needs done, be a highest priorities as we get closer and into that year. So that could be things that are like pavilions, or potentially like the bridges at Meadowbrook Park. I know we did a few years ago, so that may be time where we need to redo those as well. So just protecting some funds for those types of things. And then 2027 would be the last year of the current 5-year draft, and this is just that second year again, putting money aside for improvements to the terrace area of the lake house and that stair system that goes up top to the large pavilion. And then we've also noted in our capital plan that this may be an opportunity for us to look at more of a permanent restroom facility up by the large pavilion at that time as well. So that's kind of the main few things that we're looking for in 2026 and 27. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions or go back to any other years.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you, Andy. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Great updates. If you haven't been by the Out Deck Pavilion, drive by. It's really looking nice. I predict that's gonna be a huge success. A lot of folks are gonna enjoy their time there.
Okay, that moves us along then to the executive director's report. Tim?
As you hopefully noted, there's a lot of great information in the You Belong Here report. I want to thank the staff that work and put those together and make the events and activities happen. Quick update on the Wandell Sculpture Garden 25th anniversary. We just installed our 8th new sculpture for the exhibit last Saturday. We'll probably hold, we have approximately 3 others coming in the spring, so we're excited about that. We'll be working on that. Obviously, the celebration will continue into Jazz Walk 2023, so the goal would be to be set up and ready for that. Also want to report on the KRT fundraiser that was at Sleepy Creek last Thursday evening. We had a really good time, and thank you, Laura, for coming. I think it was great to have new people there. We had a lot of wonderful items on the auction list, the silent auction, and just want to report it's really exciting to have 3 staff groups and 3 foundations working together on a joint project. So a lot of feel good in the room. I think people are coming together, really anticipate, seeing the whole trail built. So obviously with the funds that are in the pipeline, that can be a reality. So again, just want to celebrate a little lower attendance since the last time we had it there, but obviously COVID and recovery and bringing people back still somewhat of a challenge. But one of the things the team thought about is in the fall, I believe it's in September, late September, we have the River to Rail run, the event. Be a great time to be ready to start promoting that event, selling tickets. So we're going to be ready a little ahead of schedule next year. We have some other ideas to, boost the attendance as well. But excited about that, and thank everybody that worked on that. Staff continues to work on the ARPA application for the health and wellness facility. We have a draft we're in review. We have another meeting or 2, and we'll be putting that together before it's submitted, I believe, next week sometime. So we have a little more work to do on that, and we're hopeful. We're also looking at other funding options. I think we discussed it at the finance study group. There'll be probably updates later in the meeting on that. We have contacted or got a list together of all the groups interested in e-bikes, so we'll be calling that meeting in the near future to get folks getting together. We're willing to take a lead, at least to get folks together and then see where we go. It could be that there won't be an opportunity to get uniform, rules and codes and everything to align. Certainly would be the interest. I think the response by the public is they'll probably need to go where they need to go, however they need to go. So we're probably encouraged to be ready for that. So we'll get some more feedback on that once we get together. The next item on Juneteenth, just want to report, I think we talked about it last year, that's the new federal holiday that's rolled out. I think the staff wanted to alert the board and have you all consider if that's something we would add, adding an additional 8-hour holiday. We did a little checking to see what some of the other groups are doing. Champaign Park District's considering it, they're looking at it in this next year. The Forest Preserve District just approved it, and the Urbana School District, unofficially, they've approved it, it's not in their school calendar yet. So we know that others are moving forward. I think our kind of staff recommendation as a You Belong Here organization, probably leading activities and events that day, it's something we should probably strongly consider. So I want to at least give the board some time to think about that. We could certainly come back next month with a formal request, or if the board's not supportive, certainly we could continue where we are, but just wanted to bring it up within enough time so we could put that into place if that was something we were interested in. And again, I emphasize the additional 8 hours. If we just added a holiday, that would require staff to use their paid leave in a mandated sort of way. They wouldn't choose that day off. It would be required, they would have to use their paid leave. So again, just trying to be thoughtful of, where things are changing and what holidays can and should be recognized. So if there's any thoughts, we're open. Otherwise, we could revisit it next month or put it on the agenda however you'd like. Or not. Again, we didn't expect any action tonight. It was just an information item. Let's see, moving along. 2 funds we did want to talk a little bit in detail about with the board. We talked about it at the finance study session. We have 2 funds that we think are really important and probably should be activated in a new way. First one that we'll talk about is the Brown Fund. That's from Dick and Winona Brown for Meadowbrook art and sculpture and improvements of Meadowbrook. The general approach is, more of a recommended interest use to remain keeping the principal whole, but there is a provision that allows the board to authorize any other spending for any other projects at Meadowbrook Park that would, fit that nature. So 2 things that staff's recommending that we consider strongly. One is the sculpture interpretive node. That's the semicircle that's been designed in a concept format by Ratio Architects that would allow us to interpret the sculpture, have a seating area, and recognize all of the sculpture donors. We probably have 12 or 13 or more that probably need to be recognized in a better way. Currently, we have a wood sign, and not all of the donors are recognized on that. What we propose is, there's a hard surfaced area. There'll be block seating to sort of match our look using natural stone. The names of the donors that have supported the sculptures would be carved into the seating, into the stone. And we'd like to at least check to see if we could come up with at least a couple of the sculptural benches that could be carved in some sort of, native motif that's familiar with Meadowbrook. So it's a wonderful opportunity to do that. The other area of spending we recommend is, for a long time, we've been advocating the metal standards that would give the sculpture name, the artist, the year it was created, and perhaps the donor that, if it was a purchase piece at the site. I think we've shared in the past the custom designed Corten steel with prairie grass cutouts. So that's another piece. We don't have costs tonight, of course, because we'd have to go to bid on both of those, but we just wanted to kind of see how the board felt about that, if that was an expenditure that we would consider. And again, I think staff's intent and interest is to preserve that money for the future. Certainly it wouldn't make a lot of sense to spend it all up on just anything. Not that we don't have good ideas or could put it to use, but the interpretive is really needed because we don't have any information at Meadowbrook about the sculpture program. We've been doing it, since 96, 97. So it's probably a time we get something at the site. We know we have stuff online that people could go to, but many of our visitors there, and I just think the experience would be enhanced. So those would be high priority areas of spending. I think that we'd recommend that we move forward. the benefit would be certainly tipped and, geared to the visitor and their experience. Also, being able to recognize our donors, we believe with that level of recognition, there would be probably others that would be interested in supporting, kind of have their name,
And you-
displayed in that way.
Remind me where that is going to be.
That's where the Hickman Walk comes in, heading north toward the sculpture loop, and where it meets the short loop around that intersection area would be a great, so as you come, let's say, from Vine Street, Prairie Play, come over the bridge. we'd
It's
have
where
a-
the Ellinger Skull,
There would be a,
right? Is that-
another seating area that we're looking at with the Wandell family, not sure how, that's gonna move or when that's gonna happen. But then coming up from the south, let's say if you parked at the farmstead, walked over to the garden that way, that'd be a great way to capture your attention and, kind of provide some interpretive about what's happening at that site,
Would it be north of that intersection then?
slightly north.
Okay.
Certainly we can come back and share details or get updated. We've met with Ratio Architects, Derek's probably
Do you
pulling it
have
now.
vision? Because what I'm remembering is something by the bridge that's closer to Prairie
That's the
Play.
legacy
That's
circle.
okay, that's the
Yeah.
legacy.
Families
circle.
considering, we've looked
The
at that.
council, that's the council ring,
okay.
right?
Yeah, and then what we call the half circle is the interpretive area
Okay,
on that south area that would
There we go.
recognize the sculpture and the,
okay,
information we have there.
okay,
There we go. Right
Half
there,
circle will be
that,
located right about here.
right.
yeah.
So you can imagine coming, having a straight-on, interesting space to stop and rest. It's another area where you could, people would be able to sit and watch and rest and,
Currently 3 sculptures all within view of that location. So
okay.
it's a nice
Yeah.
spot for that.
kind of a busy art area.
Yeah,
And the full council ring would be located here.
here, thank
I'm
you.
not sure how that's, really where that's going. It's really just up to the donor, to see when and if they're ready to do that. But the other is really part of our interpretive plan that I think we need to have at the site. So kind of summarize, we think staff recommends it would really be a high-level use for a really important gift use that we would lovingly and sparingly, use so that we can squeeze the most out of, what we have at Meadowbrook. So again, we just haven't been able to get to those things in a capital way. Other priorities seem to overshadow that. So again, that's what we're recommending for the Brown Fund. Couple of ways, certainly if people are just straw poll supportive, we could go that route. If not, we could bring back gift agreement, go through it next month and determine, needed a formal motion or anything
Yeah.
at that.
Again, I think the board would benefit from the clear indication, this is a small fraction
Mhm.
of the actual corpus that is under discussion for this purpose, that there would be a remaining corpus that throws off an annual amount of money for also use in support of the sculpture program.
Is this, can you remind me, is this a quasi endowment then, so we can pull off the principal and that's what you're recommending?
So, can you say that again? sir?
Is this, are these funds being held as by the foundation or by the park district?
Laura?
We own them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
They're ours.
I mean, it's, the gift was given to the park district, so.
Not
It
to
wa-
the foundation?
That's why the board of
Yeah,
commissioners.
it's a
sorry.
testamentary gift that
Yeah.
went directly to the park district. And
I mean,
But there's no way for us to invest the, I'm sorry, you have to remind me, is there a way, we're talking about, how are we investing those funds if we're expecting to have income generated off of them?
it's, I think, layered with our investment.
This is the Busey
Mhm.
that you asked us, okay, sorry, it's
Almost 600,000.
Yeah, okay.
in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. So the rough estimate if we're rural. kind of
690,000,
Yeah.
I think, in that one.
100,000, 125, we'd have to bid it, costs are up now, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would be
Mm.
supportive, but also agree with Michael that it would be helpful to have a little bit more of like a small one-page
Sure.
proposal on what we're talking about
Bring
doing.
that back next month and attach a copy of the gift agreement so that everyone would have that information. Obviously, it'd just be a concept, we don't have ideas on
Right.
cost. We can get closer. Another approach would be we wait till we get that information and then we can come back, share it at that time. But we do have a little bit of expediency because we want to be ready as soon as possible to bid and award it in a January, February window.
Mhm.
So we can certainly bring it back next month. and have a-
Uh,
Coach,
uh,
however you'd like.
Having seen the gift agreement recently relative to the finance study group, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that what's being proposed fits within the donor's wishes.
Agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
And
Because-
it's simply a policy question of where to draw the line and or how much.
Because I think that while they indicated it would be nice if we kept the principal and used only the interest, they seemed to be open and flexible toward using whatever we needed to enhance our art in the district,
In talking with
particularly Meadowbrook.
Browns, I think their idea was, look, we want to make this gift, it'll be the residual of our, life savings, at that point. We have some idea of encouraging, as Roger said, to use it in that way, but you all know best. The board knows what the needs are, and if something were to be an opportunity, you would want to do that to make Meadowbrook amazing. So that's the nature of at least our discussions. So I think they put a lot of trust in staff and board, to use it wisely. But that's the key difference. Sometimes you don't get that option. So you only get the small benefit. The good side of that is it keeps giving you small benefits. But it would never be enough to do, what we're talking about. And we have
Right.
struggled with getting a capital slot, to open up for that. Probably wouldn't be lending itself to a
What's-
grant.
What is the anticipated income earning per year off that?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I don't know that off the top of my head.
I mean, just a guesstimate.
I would,
Is it invested at like 4%?
We
it's
can come back
invested
next
at,
week, too, and find out more information.
I think it's at 2 point something at the moment,
Well, all I was going to add, I guess, to that is if we're
2.6.
okay. Oh, okay. It seems like we should be able to get hopefully more, but in the future. But I guess right, like then we're also, I guess, this new nomenclature, naming, et cetera, having a regular cost associated with that as part of the sculpture installation going for other pieces going forward. That's something we right? We're talking about, let's say, retrofitting existing sculpture in the park, but then as new things come on,
Yes, then we would
Okay,
add
yeah.
an additional,
Okay,
Right.
good, good.
so a couple of things maybe I'm tracking. Will there be a need for additional money as
Right.
we go? That's what I'm hearing.
yeah,
Yes would be the answer. And we're also considering the idea of, do we just do the owned pieces and not anything else? So that sort of creates a two-class system, so we're not in love with that approach, but there's a practical, what can we afford? Probably once we get a better idea of the cost
Cost.
of each piece and how we would use it, that might lend itself to, we could probably afford it, or maybe we come back at a later date and look at another way to get some additional ones. But at least the ones we own, so that, they're properly displayed and credit is given. And then, obviously, the seating area, more formal, let's call it larger public, option at that point. But again, the key thing would be to be able to tell the story. We keep having people tell us that you gotta tell your story, and people don't know. And so this is an opportunity for us to tell that piece of that story.
and I definitely agree that the donors, I would think, should be recognized at also the piece.
Frankly, it's embarrassing,
Yeah.
Yep.
because we have a number of people not even on the sign. We're reluctant to go put together a sign to put it up, only to have you guys approve it and then go back and tear it all out and put something. So we're trying to get it in the right place as
And-
soon as we possibly can.
And some of those have been around for 25 years, so,
We've had probably 25 years of, maybe next year we can do it.
Yeah.
And we just haven't been able to. And so we've started thinking, really, probably 2 years ago, of, hey, the Brown Fund, what about that? Well, let's not start poking at that yet. The more we looked at it, we realized, no, that's probably the kind of project that the Browns would love to see happen, promoting the art and the sculpture and elevating its presence.
Well, exactly. I mean, at least my view of it is it will be foundational for going on into the future, making more exciting things happen there.
Right.
That certainly would be the hope.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
So, obviously with the, attention it's gotten in elevation and, the best of, kind of, we wanna make sure we're doing, what can we do to encourage that, enhance it, and make sure it keeps, its place in comparison to other places. So I think when you look at the garden and the site information and the presence and the way it's, presenting itself is fairly low quality. And so I think if we could improve that, the visitor's experience would be improved. But we'd be happy to come back next month with some more information, the amount of the current number, anything we know about the investment, and any sort of proposal or costs that we could maybe consider. And again, until we bid things, we won't really know, but we could probably come up with a neighborhood. All right, questions, other thoughts on that?
I have a question a ways back.
Okay.
And that's with the 25th anniversary.
Yes,
Kathy and I have both been stopped by 2 or 3 people in the park to say, how long will these new sculptures be in the park? Are they just here for the 25th? There's some concern that it's appearing cluttered in some areas.
who's saying that, Roger? What kind of feedback or what?
These are just people that stopped us and that know us and stopped us and said that.
Curious. Obviously, what we intend is for the exhibit. If somebody or anybody was interested in helping, extend it, that may be a possibility. We would probably not be able to extend, to keep them longer.
They don't want it extended.
Understood.
Yeah.
We have to understand, though, it is a park and a sculpture garden.
I
And so
understand
Trying
that.
to please everybody.
Well, and I'm not thinking of the sculpture garden proper,
Right.
but the meadow
The whole
and,
park is a
yeah,
sculpture garden.
yeah,
That aren't the
okay,
entire garden.
okay.
So to say it's just this vicinity wouldn't
Okay.
really be accurate. It's the entire park.
Maybe as we promote the 25th anniversary, that's something that we should stress so that people understand that. I know you and I had
Right.
a conversation about people, art, and nature, and maybe that needs to be stressed again in the explanation of that.
I think an interpretive piece would sure get to the crux of that issue.
Yeah.
What's the intent and the purpose, So without that, we've probably suffered that message for, since the
Yeah.
beginning. So I think that would definitely help.
But I must tell you that everyone that has heard that bison are coming to the prairie are absolutely over the moon. So that's the other side of this. So
I think, kind of that's been our experience really from the beginning. There's a lot of interest. By and large, it's hugely popular and successful, but there'll always be somebody that's not their cup of tea. And certainly we have other activities and other areas, for those people.
When is the bison coming?
So the
When
pad
is
got
it
poured
coming?
today.
What's that?
The pad got poured today.
Okay.
yeah,
As early as next week, we'll have the green light to install it. We're talking with the artist right now to see if he would like to be there or not. He's going to be in Texas working on another installation next week. So I anticipate either next week or the week after.
Fantastic.
And just a tangential comment, is it still the case that work is being done by one of the minority businesses that we've recruited or not?
That particular pad was not. This was a custom pad using a special relief and release dye, and it required someone that had done that type of work before. Yeah. However, we did have other pads done by minority contractors at Meadowbrook, 2 sets. And then additionally, we're repairing the path work at Crestview with a minority contractor.
The second fund staff wanted to talk about a little tonight is the English fund that's tied to the Indoor Aquatic Center. And really the short, kind of information on that is we're recommending we start to rely on that in a much heavier way, certainly at least for the capital needs. Our capital budget, as you can see, is pretty tight as the years go forward. That fund would definitely help us in, supporting some of our ongoing costs. It's a designated fund only for the Indoor Aquatic Center. It's got to be used for a public pool, so it can't really be shifted or used for, or probably shouldn't be intended to use for other types of uses or covering other costs. So it's, in essence, what we call it, it's a tightly controlled fund just for that purpose. And we think we need to start relying on that more so in our budget as we look for ways to, bring some efficiencies to the Indoor Aquatic Center. That's one that we would strongly recommend. So likely what we'll do is, as we put budgets together and share them as part of our new agreement, that would be something we'd want to highlight, that we would utilize or make a recommendation, at least to the board, to utilize a certain amount for some portion of that. And again, it gives us some relief on the capital budget, and it's money that's available. Obviously, when it's used up, it's gone, but it is only for that facility, so it's very, very limited. We'll come back, obviously, later with more information about that as we go. Next, quick update, the IAPD Legal Symposium was last week. Had a really good lesson in many, many things as staff every year do. Workplace rules, mental health, looking at one of the new provisions that we'll be involved with is a new law that was passed that really kind of looks at the efficiencies of districts. So IAPD sort of headed off that, was part of that government consolidation interest. I think there was a way to whittle down special districts. So IAPD was successful in sort of staving that off, but the part that did go forward and is a new law is, you have to have some steps to show the efficiency of your agency. And so IAPD is going to create a template, be getting that out to all the member districts, basically on the, approaches that you could choose to do that would make that fairly simple and achievable. So it's really kind of a report, can be as simple or as complex as one would want to make it, the way they described it. But there's a few parts you need to include, and once we get that information, we can show that in a little more detail. But that's one new requirement that all districts will be expected to have submitted for next year. Again, we're not in love with that approach, but if it was a way to stave off maybe a graver law in place with more requirements, this might be something we could manage. Also want to report, we had the Cupcake 5K race for CU Special Rec Sunday at Carl at the Fields. We had over 400 people that were signed up. It's a major event now, so we're very excited about the numbers. Personally, I don't think the site is ideal. It's at Carl at the Fields, right next to the interstate. It's roaring traffic. There's not a shade spot to be seen. Super windy and exposed. I think our hope is that we could provide an alternative location in one of these alternating years to kind of create a better park, environment. But as far as an open space with lots of parking, it's ideal for that. So we're pleased about that, and that event's grown each year too. I think that's all I had. I can answer any questions about that.
Okay, then moving on to President's Report and upcoming meetings. The UPDAC meeting this month is moved up a week. And then in December, our study session is now scheduled to be at the Indoor Aquatic Center. Is that correct?
Sorry, I was taking notes, Michael.
Sorry, our study session next month is scheduled to be actually at the Indoor Aquatic Center?
I think our idea was to
Or the
locate-
topic is going to be,
Yes.
it will be the,
Topic?
Here,
Yeah, I'm
but
not
that's the
on
topic.
here, and the topic is the Aquatic Center.
Okay.
Gotcha, sorry.
Okay.
You were
Thank
suggesting we
you.
move to okay, we can move there.
Well, no,
That's just what
No,
it's,
No,
Party.
there was a previous meeting which I was confused as well on the location.
Same.
yeah,
Same
and
here,
I just
same
wanted
here.
to exactly make sure that we understood that. And then the December meeting is full of a bunch of things that we got to finish up before the end of the calendar year. Plus, I mean, that's the abating property taxes and closing out the annual bond sale. We absolutely need to get those both done. And we also start to be talking about goals for the coming fiscal year. And action to accept the annual meeting calendar that was included in this packet this month. And we need to get a priority projects report off to the Parks Foundation. Boy, that's a lot of work for staff as part of as part of this coming meeting. So, and is the ADA transition plan update actually going to be done this year, even though there's a study in session? I mean, in progress at
Yeah,
this point.
It'll be reflective of our current plan, and we're
And
still
you'll
working on
then
that, exactly.
Okay. Moving on to the various liaison reports. The Finance Study Group did meet last Friday. A lot of that's already been discussed in the meeting here tonight. Just looking in the list here, there was some discussion just in general about what happens with the Carl Wellness Grant once that expires in another year, whether we need to be finding an alternative source or what the implications of that is. There was some, I don't mean to say nebulous, but some indication by staff of concerns about needing additional staff to cover the district. And obviously, that will raise cost concerns for the board to how that could be financed and make sure that it would be done properly. We've already been over the capital project stuff here that was discussed. The vehicle purchases that are later on the agenda tonight got actually a fair bit of time. And then there was some discussion about the block grants, the federal block grants that the city administers, and how our interaction with that funding might change in the future. So, and we will be meeting again on the 2nd of December. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to
No,
that,
you
Roger?
covered it well.
I gather the policy study group has not met,
No, we have not met.
and Parks Foundation,
The
right?
foundation has not met either.
Okay, and nor has the UPDAC Planning Study Group, I gather, as well. Okay.
Pardon?
Oh,
Is there a foundation event on December 7th? Is there a winter foundation event? We should
Yes.
Yes,
on our
Holiday
calendars.
festival.
yeah, and I
December
don't
7th?
I don't have that. I
Okay.
should have reported that at the last meeting. Tim, I'll need you to represent me at the next foundation meeting. I'll be out of town. Yeah, I don't remember what it is.
okay, unless there are any other questions about liaison reports, I think we're ready to move on to old business. Item A being action to approve the tax levy ordinance
Before
2022-05.
Laura's got info on the ordinance.
So, yeah, we had the ordinance last month, and with the decision to go with the 22.5%, the ordinance is created based on that information, and that needs to be filed with the county clerk, so
And
the resolution has
and
become
the
an
numbers,
ordinance.
the bottom line number in this is what ended up in the black box.
Beg your pardon?
The bottom line number is what ends up in the black box.
Correct, correct.
Yeah, and we have published that black box and now are open to being able to approve this document. I had a silly proofreading formatting question. The sections of these things,
Like
they're not
strike through.
exactly underlined and they're not exactly struck
Crossed
out,
out.
and it appears very odd to me. Can that be corrected before the document actually ends up being
So,
filed away on a more permanent basis?
You see what he means? Yeah.
Well, we can see. I gotta assume that that's a Xerox issue.
Really noticeable on the back page.
Yeah, on the last two, it really looks like these are struck.
Yeah, it
That was like
does.
literally my first thought. I was like, oh, those are all struck through.
Yeah.
can take a look at that.
I mean,
Well, they-
it doesn't matter a whit to the meaning of all of it, but it does look a little bizarre.
We just might have to take it here or someplace to copy it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, so, I move to approve ordinance 2022-05, an ordinance providing for the levying, assessment, and collection of taxes for the fiscal year 2023-24 of the Urbana Park District.
Second?
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions on the point? Hearing none, we should do a roll call vote. Start with Cedric.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously. And next up is action to accept the 2022 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, which was the subject of last week's meeting.
Or did you wanna do an intro on that, accepting the audit?
We have a motion to accept that audit, I mean, the Comprehensive Financial Report.
Go ahead.
I move to accept the 2022 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the year ended April 30th, 2022.
Second.
Seconded by Roger. And are there any questions or further comments? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call, starting with Roger.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and that carries unanimously with all four commissioners voting. There was no old business removed from the consent agenda, so we're on to new business, which is action to approve the 2023 capital improvement budget.
Shared the budget last month with you all in a little more detail. Andy's popped back on the screen, could certainly provide any more information or answer any questions.
Yeah, as I kind of stated a little bit ago, the budget was presented last month. We didn't have any changes for what you have in front of you for tonight. I'll just note that in addition to many of our regular expense lines, we have the third year funding for Prairie Play replacement. Also the first year where we're starting to put funding together for the trail at South Ridge. Vehicles and equipment includes a replacement of the Arbor lift truck, our backhoe, and a couple smaller pieces of equipment, our aquatic center mower and the scissor lift. We're actually currently working with our local sales representatives for the Arbor truck and the backhoe this month on beginning to get some pricing through the Sourcewell bid as well that we hope to be able to take a recommendation to you all in the next month or two.
And I just want to go back to the English fund and point out, this is an example of the IAC UAB share of capital expenses, that these are the types of things you would like to allocate to the English fund.
Yes.
Okay.
That would certainly help and take pressure off,
Yeah.
at least the funding source.
Yeah, the 20,000, is
Yeah,
that
the
what you're talking about?
20,000
Yeah,
line item is an example.
for sure on that.
Yeah, okay.
At least that.
Well, if there's no further questions, I think it's a recommendation for improvement.
And as you well remember, we do occasionally modify this during the year in response to changing needs or unexpected occurrences.
I move to approve the 2023 capital improvement budget.
Second?
That's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, we'll start with Roger.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and that passes unanimously. Next up is action to approve resolution 2022-13 for a local funding resolution and joint funding agreement with ITEP for the Broadway Avenue path.
Andy's here, can provide any info?
Yeah, this is very similar to what we had to complete for our last ITEP along Park Street as part of the ITEP Path and Pedestrian Bridge project in Crystal Lake along Broadway. IDOT requires us again to the local public agency to execute a funding agreement, and part of that agreement needs us to approve a resolution that in effect gives Michael signature authority and states that the district will pay any balance of construction costs. So we have both those documents included within the board packet tonight, and have 5 copies in the signature folder as well. And then we'll get those sent off to IDOT once we finish up everything on our end. I did want to note that although that we don't have any local funds needed for the construction of the path at this point, there is potential for bids to come in higher than the grant maximum award. And so in that scenario, we would need to fund that overage. And so if that occurs, we do have protected funds in our capital budgets. We have about $185,000 currently protected in the case that that scenario does happen. And schedule-wise, we're still kind of on our original schedule for the project to have a bid letting in January. That's through IDOT, and then construction to begin sometime this spring and completion in the fall of 23. So tonight it's really approving the resolution and then giving authority to Michael as our board president to then sign and execute the funding agreement that then we'll send off to IDOT for their signatures.
And this is somewhat a form agreement that IDOT sends out, that's been filled out there. The only oddity in all of that is that term balance. That's what they really mean is whatever the delta is between the actual grant award and where the bids come in, and I presume that if that delta was too large, we could just simply abandon the project, which obviously we would rather not end up doing, but
Agencies
this-
have also been known to rebid a project if it comes in,
Yeah.
or sometimes even to negotiate with a low bid contractor. But it is an oddity of, working with an ITEP grant that, they're the ones that are actually bidding it. We're just, kind of waiting for the news. So far, Fairgraham's estimates suggest that we're on target. And the reason we have such a healthy balance available in the event the bids come in higher is because we initially budgeted to have a local
Right.
match, and then found out through good
right.
news that we
And
don't need it.
and typically there is a 20% at least local
Correct.
match. So given the strange way that this one transpired, ultimately, presumably it's turned out well to our advantage, although the bidding climate right now is not to our advantage.
And our costs were estimated, a while ago, so.
Yep.
So if you're in a high volume bidding time, you anticipate that, which obviously we didn't at the time of the application. But we're hoping the offsets work in our favor.
I move to approve local funding agreement for state-let construction work and resolution 2022-13.
Second.
Moved by Roger, seconded by Cedric. And is there any further discussion on the point? Hearing none, let's do a roll call, starting with Cedric.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously. Next up is action to authorize purchase of 3 fleet trucks.
Little background, I'm sure planning will definitely want to add some more, but, it's a really difficult climate right now for purchasing or building really anything. One of the particular challenges is vehicles. There was trouble last year and more trouble this year. When I was at the Directors Roundtable 2 weeks ago, I think every district's very, very concerned about trying to get vehicles. Some groups didn't get any last year, weren't able to get bids. So what staff's recommending is we do something a little bit different, try to pre-approve a level not to exceed for the vehicles so that we can move as fast as we can and get in line and hopefully get what we, believe we need to purchase. I'll turn it back over to staff if you want to give any more background or particulars. We did talk about this at the study group and explained it in detail of, how this works. So it's slightly different than what we typically do, which would be bid, get a price, and then.
Yeah, an important detail of which is that there are very narrow pricing windows that come up, and it's a little difficult to fit in that pricing window a board meeting, so that you get a number and the board can vote on it. So that's the reason for authorizing staff at a much higher sum than we normally do.
Andy, was there anything more you wanted to add? I could certainly add some if not.
Yeah, I mean, we've had difficulty with lots of vehicles and equipment, but the biggest issue has been the heavy-duty trucks for whatever reason. And there's been a year where they cut off orders for their production, within days. And in a lot of instances, people had orders in and they were just told that they're canceled. And so we have 3 trucks that are really kind of been our holdups for the most part during COVID. So it's a 3/4 ton tool truck, 3/4 ton grounds truck, and then a 1-ton dump truck. And we've been investigating through Sourcewell, which is a government cooperative bidding group. We've purchased through them before for other equipment, but they also have vehicles, of course. And our understanding is that Ford is actually going to open up orders in the next couple weeks and will release their pricing. And then at that time, we can reserve a spot and then receive a price for each of the vehicles. And then at that point, we would have, a shortened window to basically accept or reject that bid price. And, so we're going to look at, what we're anticipating is to look at Sourcewell and the Illinois state cooperative bid and evaluate our best options and then be able to react quickly so that we don't miss out on that window and be pushed back a whole nother year, and then be likely in this same scenario, next year. I think this is going to be the next couple of years, probably at least, that we're going to have these challenges with sourcing and procuring this equipment. And so, our hope is that we'd be able to have the board approve a not to exceed budget number for each truck. So all this has already been budgeted in the previous 2 capital years. So we're just assigning funds from the vehicles and equipment general capital lines for each vehicle. And then when we receive that pricing, then we'd be able to act quickly and evaluate the pricing that make sure it was reasonable during our time now and be able to act on it. And then I think what we've been told is that we would receive that vehicle likely within the next year. And then at that time we'd do our normal auction of the existing vehicles that we're looking to replace and then recoup some of those costs, of course, with that auction.
And the only thing I would add to what Andy shared is that, these prices are based upon research we've done on previous procurements, looking at state bids that are currently available for similar but different vehicles. There's a 350 available right now, but not a 450 or 250, which is what the 3/4 and 1-ton are. We think that there's about a 5% contingency in these numbers, a buffer, just in the event that pricing comes in higher than we expect. And we also included enough in these numbers to purchase things like a plow, a Tawny liftgate, and things like that. And there's some differences between state bid and Sourcewell in terms of what options are available. We want to give ourselves the flexibility to get them if they are indeed available to us.
Just wanted to add, I appreciate the staff's creative work, thinking this through, checking all the sources, figuring out how difficult good this piece is, so I think it's something that would work. Hopefully if the prices hold and the ranges are good, that would give us our best option. Still could possibly result in something not coming through or some
Yeah.
other issue that we're not aware of.
The city of Urbana is still waiting on a 650 they ordered over a year ago. Some of the state bid trucks that were ordered last year were just canceled, as Andy indicated. We've been communicating with the fleet officers at Urbana and Champaign, as well as Champaign Park District. We're all comparing notes, trying to decide how best to advance, and we think this is our best opportunity.
Well, I move to approve the purchase through cooperative government bidding of up to 3 new fleet trucks at a cost not to exceed 1 3/4 ton truck, up to $60,000, 1 3/4 ton tool truck up to $70,000, and an A 1 ton dump truck up to $70,000.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Are there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, starting with Cedric.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously.
Andy, thank you. Get some rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
So next item of business is conference delegate credentials for the annual joint meeting.
Well, it's that time of year again. As you all know, IAPD's, one of their functions is to officially register delegates and alternates for the annual business meeting. As I typically often say, I'm certainly going to be there and happy to go. I didn't know if people knew what their schedules were at this point. Certainly somebody could be willing to do it if their plans changed. If I was the alternate, I certainly could attend if that worked. Or if others know they're going to attend and would like to be that.
Are there,
A longer, often mostly drier meeting, so it doesn't get people to rush to this opportunity. I guess that's good, though. Let's say the upside,
Well-
there's not any controversial, typically, in the many years, controversial issues or anything critical or on the line. Not to say that there couldn't be on that agenda. I don't know the exact agenda. Haven't heard of anything of major concern.
well, I think first off, are there any commissioners attending the conference in the first place?
I don't know yet.
I,
What, it's always a tough time for me. It's the beginning of the semester.
and frankly, I would not want to take the health risk.
I think that's being shared, Michael. Definitely, I'm absolutely sure that we won't be a typical conference year, even at this. And am I correct? Are they offering a virtual option this year or not?
They're not.
I couldn't remember if they were trying to decide or had decided not to.
Yeah.
We did it last year. It worked really well. The virtual attendance, my personal opinion, if we could offer that, there are many, many districts that can't afford to go to conference. Many small park districts that just have a few staff that would probably jump at the chance to attend remotely, because you can get all the learning and the content. But at any rate, that's what they're doing this year. So
I mean, I'm interested.
You are likely to go?
I would like to, yeah.
Yeah.
When is the last day for the early registration? Is that December-ish?
coming up, we have probably another week or so, usually around Thanksgiving or after.
Okay.
29th, I'm guessing. We can let you know, though.
Yeah.
You want us to follow up?
Yes, please.
Do we need to take this action tonight, or, okay?
Yes, we have to
We
file.
are, okay.
By the 29th of November, it has to be filed, and the,
Okay.
sorry,
Well, we,
credential certificate
December 12th
is the,
is your early birthday.
Thanks.
yep.
so we may as well go ahead tonight, I think. You're not likely to go, Roger? Nor I, and I assume Nancy probably not either.
I'm a maybe.
And So
Depends on some,
seems to make most sense to put Cedric on top and you second and Tim third, if that is agreeable.
Yes. I move to certify that Cedric Stratton, Meredith Bloomsdale, and/or Tim Bartlett are designated to serve as delegates to the annual 2023 business meeting of the IAPD.
That's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Doing a roll call vote this time, starting with Roger.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. Any review of the annual board actions calendar?
You have before you a typical layout of all the formal actions. It's a guide we use for informing the public, informing the board, putting our packets together. Just wanted to comment, we do often, sometimes slide something a month or two, depending on the situation, so it certainly has flexibility, but it's kind of a work plan where we try to catalog every major action, so we stay on schedule for the year. There's
And-
no action required, but it's information.
And we do end up perhaps formally approving this next month? Or not? It was one of the things listed on, on the upcoming
We have
meeting.
had it on our list.
Yeah.
Um, It's really up to the board if we
I
continue
mean,
that. I don't think it's a
yeah,
state law.
Unless we actually want to revise it, I'm not sure we need to make
Yeah, we use it
any
as
kind
a
of formal
guide.
action.
Keep us on track, but if somebody wanted to know,
Yeah.
hey, what month do we do this? That would be the document we would look to lay out our work.
Okay. Um, If there are no questions, then let's move on to the 2023 goals review.
Great. Staff's put together the annual goals from the staff work groups, not the strategic plan goals. They're all included, so they are our strategic plan goals, but more of the work plan goals. As you know, we've been, over the last several years, using the stoplight approach. Green would be things that are completed. Yellow, which as you can see are most of the items are in some sort of progress. And then a few reds that either indicate we haven't started or we're getting more information. Certainly trying to figure things out. We didn't necessarily anticipate going through every line tonight, but if there's anything you have questions about, areas, just even general areas that you wanted to ask about. We're very pleased in the number and the quality of goals. And occasionally, there are a few that we determine maybe we can't do it or something's changed. For example, one I noted that's in red, which we probably will be able to do, but it talks about a draft wayfinding plan for Crystal Lake Park. Obviously, if things aren't completed there, that may be something we discuss at some level, but may not have a plan that we bring forward to the board. And we have staff here that could talk about any of the staff work. Again, we always try to be respectful of your time. We wouldn't assume we'd want to read each one. However, we have it, and we can do that if you'd like.
This one's also kind of tough to read. It looks like, you know, if somebody wants a better copy, I can lighten the
Green.
red, yellow, and green so that it's a bit more readable.
My copy's okay, but I don't know
Yeah,
about
mine is too.
the others.
Just let me know. I'd be happy to get an additional copy.
Typical year would be, most everything is typically would be done, by the end of the fiscal. If there's generally a change, that goal tends to move forward in another format. typically.
Well, and again, this is the midpoint. We will be looking at this presumably again closer to the end of the fiscal year.
Back with next year's goals, we can review all the strategic goals and, details of this. we often try to pick a study session, to at least give us a little more time, and so we don't have to cram it into one of our business meetings. Anything that staff needed to point out? Again, I think we're in good standing. Certainly can answer any questions.
Well, I must say, given all the challenges there have been dealing with a couple of our very high priority things, it's not surprising that there's some red marks sitting in that set of goals. The staff's been working enormously hard, just trying to keep up with a changing grant environment and the changing construction estimates of the health and wellness. I mean, this has been a not easy fiscal year so far.
Again, no action needed or required on that, just information item.
So we're ready to move on to the Crystal Lake Park Bridge Intergovernmental Agreement.
All right, next item, I think it's one that we've discussed at a couple of meetings or study sessions. As you know, the Park District's working with the Sanitary District, who has a need to replace the Interceptor Bridge in Crystal Lake Park. That's the bridge that carries the Sanitary District's effluent across the park and particularly across the lake. As you know, I think their initial intent was to cover the cost. As we began working and realizing some of the estimates were really growing, and then finally ultimately bidding and realizing, you know, it's essentially double the cost, I think they came back and started talking to us about any ways we could find efficiency or reductions. That was really important to us. We wanted to maintain the width and some decent character of the bridge. While they're generous in the ability to cover some additional cost with inflation, we were asked if there was any funding that we could provide. We thought about it long and hard and realized we might have some DCO funding coming back to us for some previously committed supports. And so the general notion of the IGA is, if and when we get that money, would we agree to cost share back $300,000 that's identified in the agreement. It's also included in the agreement if we couldn't get the money, if the state just didn't pay, or, you know, it's, I'm assuming many, many years go by and you realize not likely. And some of the DCO funds are challenging to get. We would not be required to come up with an additional way to pay for that. So we felt that that was a very fair and I would say generous approach, and we're more than willing to share because it would be a bridge that would fit our character and our need, have the 8-foot wide requirement for at least us, or standard that we prefer. So we're grateful to the Sanitary District. They shared it with their board. They approved it at their meeting earlier, and now it's before you all. Failed to suggest a motion, but certainly a simple motion of accepting the IGA as presented would suffice. But again, it's cover both districts, and we did have our legal staff review it. Everything's in good order. That was done prior to their board reviewing it and approving it. Anything else, Derek, I left out on details? Schedule, I think, is as soon as possible, you know, to get things moving and committed and approve the bid. And it's a little unusual. We haven't had a way like this that I can recall in the past, but we didn't have an option for a funding source that could, you know, be applied in this way.
Well, I guess I'll just maybe take a step back. You all may recall that when we started the lake rehab project, we included a portion of work that the sanitary district was interested in, which was to evaluate the condition of the bridge. And when they started looking into it more closely, realized it was in very poor condition. Their hope at that time was simply to repair anything that was in bad shape, but as they found out more about it, they realized that they may be better to replace it. And they went into the bidding exercise expecting to do that. The bids came in quite high, and at that point, they began looking at replacement again. And it was when we realized that we had potentially some DCO funds coming in that could help offset the cost that it reopened the possibility for the bridge. A little bit of value engineering, at this point mostly with the manholes that will receive the effluent or the influent coming to the sanitary district. We did shorten the span of the bridge a little bit. We were able to maintain the width. Rather than having a slight modified bow arch, this will be a straight bridge, which is what the bridge is today. It will be a Core 10 bridge, similar to what you may be familiar with from visiting state parks or national parks. Very attractive bridge, exactly like you've seen elsewhere. So I'm appreciative the sanitary district is moving forward. They're doing so knowing that these funds, although very likely to be received, are not for certain, but that this agreement reflects that if we don't get them, they're moving forward regardless.
Right. We out of our current capital funds are not gonna have to write a check for this if
Correct.
that grant does not come through.
Right.
Yeah, that's to me, the really salient point.
And again, we really appreciate that. I think their hope was, look, if you could help in any way, that would be great. If something happened, you couldn't do this, we understand, but no, there wouldn't be a requirement to go find additional funding sources. So we have at least 3 DCO projects we're tracking and trying to get that money back. Obviously, health and wellness, super important. This one, and then our work with the KRT. I'd say our health and wellness is really the most critical and timely. This one we definitely want to continue to inquire about and try to get. Certainly it's a benefit to us to have that new bridge in place, and you know, we're getting a good cost share. Probably if it was presented in a different way, I from a director's perspective, I can't imagine we would be opposed to cost sharing, you know, for a joint mutual benefit. Albeit the pipe is theirs and that's where it needs to go, so we could step back and say, you know, we have nothing to do with it. The fact that they were willing to consider our needs for bicycle pedestrian access and events and things like that, so we're appreciative of that.
Tim, did you say that this requires a motion?
It does. We would, and sorry, we didn't have a motion highlighted there, but simply that, you know, our district would approve the IGA between the
So,
Park District.
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement providing for cost sharing on the Crystal Lake Park Interceptor Crossing project.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none.